Hello and welcome to helpyourmath.com. In this video, we are going to look at slightly more complicated conversions between percents, fractions, and decimals. If you haven't watched the video on the straightforward conversions, I suggest going back and watching that video now. Just to review the 6 different conversions between these 3 ways of expressing values, to convert a percent to a decimal, we move the decimal point 2 places to the left, because remember what that's really doing? It's dividing by 100. When we are converting out of percent form, we will drop the percent symbol. Converting from a percent to a fraction, we'll put the percent value over 100 and simplify, and again, we will remove the percent symbol. To convert from a decimal to a percent, move the decimal point 2 places to the right and add the percent sign because we are multiplying by 100. To convert a fraction to a percent, one strategy that will work every time is to multiply by 100% and then simplify. There are other strategies we can use if we have a friendly denominator, meaning we have a denominator that's also a factor of 100, but this one works every time, so we're going to go with that. To convert a fraction to a decimal, we'll divide the numerator by the denominator. And then a decimal to a fraction, we assume the decimal terminates. We're going to count the smallest place that there's a digit and put the entire number over that power of 10 and simplify. Okay, in this example, we're given a fraction. We're given the fraction 5/12. We want to show the exact percent, so that means we're going to keep a fraction in the percent, and then we're also going to round it to the nearest tenth of a percent. Once we've rounded it, then we'll convert to a decimal. So I'm going to convert to a percent first, and then I'll convert to a decimal. So remember, when we go from fraction into percent, we're going to take our fraction, 5/12, and we'll multiply by 100%. Since I have one fraction, I'll put the 100% over 1. I like to simplify before I multiply. I recognize that both 12 and 100 are divisible by 4. So this would become 3, and this would become 25. And then when I multiply straight across, I get 125% over 3, or 125 over 3%. And now what I probably want to do, because that's not like super awesome, I don't really know what that means, so I'm going to convert it to a mixed number. The mixed number means, well, you can go ahead and start this division, and then we'll actually use this again in a minute. We're going to divide the denominator into the numerator. And for now, we're going to look at the remainder, but when we convert it to its equivalent decimal, then we'll look at the decimal point. 3 goes into 12 4 whole times. That's exactly 12. Beautiful. That gives me 0. I'll bring down the 5. 3 goes into 5 one time, minus 3, and I get a remainder of 2. So 2 is my remainder. That's what's going to go over my original denominator. So 125 over 3 is the equivalent of 41, and my remainder was 2 over original denominator, 3%. That's better. That I get a little bit more than 125 over 3. I see this number is just less than half. It's bigger than 40%, and so on. So this would be the exact percent. But the next thing it says is to find it rounded to a tenth of a percent. So I'm going to keep going here. I'm going to add my decimal point. To convert to a tenth, I need tenths and hundredths, so I'll add 2 zeros. I'll bring down one of them and keep this going. 3 goes into 26 whole times, minus 18, I get 2. Bring down the 0. 3 goes into 26 whole times. I see a pattern here. Whoops, I forgot to move my decimal point up. We'll move the decimal point up. And now we have the percent is approximately 41 point, this 6 tells this 6 to bump up 41.7%. This would be our approximate. Okay, so now we want to convert to the decimal. I'm going to use the percent rather than going back and using my given fraction. I've already done all this work. I don't want to have to do it all again. To convert the percent to a decimal, I'll use this one, right? We don't want to use a fraction. I'm going to divide by 100. I'm going to move the decimal 2 places to the left, and my decimal will be 0.417. I'll just leave those all in. This would be my decimal. And these would be my 3 answers. So it asked for the percent, the decimal. It asked for the percent in 2 different ways, and the decimal just in that one way. Voila! There it is. That's not terrible, right? That's not so bad. We could also, if you did want to check the decimal, you could plug this in your calculator by doing 5 divided by 12, and that should give you that 0.4166666666, and then we would want to round it accordingly. In this example, we're given the percent. However, the percent is not an integer. It's a percent that includes a fraction. And we want to convert to its equivalent fraction and decimal, and then we're going to have to probably round the decimal. We'll round it to the nearest hundredth. It doesn't matter which one we do. I think they're going to require 2 different strategies anyway. Fractions first, we'll start with fraction. To convert to a fraction, remember what we're going to do is we're going to divide by 100. This would be 10 and 5/7 divided by 100. Now this is a little bit awkward. I'm not going to write it like that. I don't like that. We're going to say divided by 100. But now there's 2 things I need to do. Number 1, we can't divide with mixed numbers because mixed numbers are secretly addition problems. So what we need to do is rewrite it as its equivalent improper fraction. To convert a mixed number to an improper fraction, we take the denominator, 7, multiply it to the whole part, 10, so that's 70, add the numerator, that gives me 75, and keep the common denominator. The other thing is, now that I have a fraction and its division, we might recall this property that says when we're dividing with fractions, we might want to multiply by the reciprocal of the divisor. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do the reciprocal of 100 would be 1 over 100, and then I can rewrite this as multiplication and make my life a little bit easier. Before I multiply, I do like to simplify first. 75 and 100 have a common factor of 25. 25 goes into 75 3 times, and it goes into 100 4 times. Now I can multiply straight across, and I get my fraction to be 3 out of 28. And that would be it. So for the fraction, again, what we need to do is rewrite the mixed number as an improper fraction. And then we want to rewrite the division, since we do have a fraction already, rewrite the division as multiplication by multiplying by the reciprocal. The reciprocal of 100 would be 1 over 100. Next up, we want to find the equivalent decimal. And in this case, we actually want to use the fraction, so that way we don't have to worry about doing any more division by 100. We've already done that for the fraction. So now I'm just going to do a straight conversion from the fraction to the decimal. And so remember how I convert a fraction to a decimal. I'm going to take the denominator and put it out of the house. I'll put the numerator in the house. I'm rounding to the nearest hundredth, so I'm going to add 3 zeros. The hundredths place is the second 0, but I need the third one to help guide me. Move my decimal point straight up, and now we'll start the division process. 28 goes into 31 time, minus 28, that would be 2. Bring this down, we get 0, minus 0, if we need to do that, 20. And then 28 into 200. If we don't know, we might go off to the side. Let's start with 5 right in the middle. That's going to give me 140. I think we can get at least 1 more, maybe even 2 more. Let's try 2 higher than that. Let's try 7. 56, that's a 5. That's 196. That'll do. And really all we needed to know was that it was 5 or more, right? It actually doesn't even matter what that number is, because whether it's 5 or something bigger than 5, it's going to tell that hundredths place to bump up. And so our decimal equivalent will be about 0.11. Now again, I showed the work. You might be able to just use a calculator and do 3 divided by 28, and you should get 0.107, and then I don't know what comes after that. But there are the 2 answers. We have 3/28 and 0.11 approximately. And the last thing I just wanted to talk about were common awkward percents. So it's usually, it's always awkward when we see fractions within percents, but some are quite common, and that's my 66 2/3 and 33 1/3%. We might just want to be familiar with those. They also have like this special property. 66 2/3% has a fraction equivalent of 2/3. I think these are the only 2 examples where it actually ends up just being the fraction. So that's kind of nice. And then the decimal equivalent would be 0.67. Over here, 33 1/3, it has a fraction equivalent of 1/3 and a decimal equivalent of 0.3 repeating, where the 3 repeats. So those are just, kind of nice to know things that we could use. They come up a lot, right? 1/3 is kind of a frequent thing to expect. But these have been examples of just looking at slightly more awkward conversions from the more straightforward ones. I hope you found this helpful. Thank you for stopping by.